Everybody, and welcome to another episode on the Lessons from the Game podcast. Today is our short form episode, and we'll be previewing the big game this weekend, France versus South Africa. Is it the revenge game? Is it just another game in November? And we're all just going to have a little bit of fun. But to talk about this game, I've asked my good friend and agent, Damien Dussault, to join us today and give the French perspective and point of view on things. But before we get stuck in today's chat, Damien, brother, how's it going? You good?
I'm all right. I'm looking forward to a big weekend of rugby. So all good. Weather's good. I hope it's going to be a big game between France and South Africa in the weekend.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a great one. Just on a personal note, you still, owe me a meal at La Côte et l'Arrêt. We still need to go for that Côte de Boeuf and the foie gras and the jambon pâte negra. So I just thought I'd put it out there so like that it's public, so you can't forget that and you put it on the books.
Yeah, I'm just worried about who's going to pay. It depends on if France or the Blacks are. I'm not sure how to bet on that one because I can't control it.
Oh, man. Damien, I asked you to join me on the pod today because it's a big game. Normally we don't really preview games on the podcast and stuff like that, but I just thought it was such a big game in the sense of what happened in the World Cup in 2023, how distraught the French nation was, and, even the players, how they struggled to come back and find their performance. But I thought, let me just kick off the topic and this discussion today with you and ask you, how do you feel that the French nation handled that loss at home in 2023, the Rugby World Cup against the Springboks?
Well, it was very bad. Look, it's been obviously a very controversial game with many decisions from the referee that's been discussed after the game. But after, I'm the type of person to think a loss is a loss, a win is a win. So we lost. I think it was huge in the sense that probably have the best generation ever in our national team at the moment. And we saw 2023, it was home. We should have won that World Cup. You took away that dream. And I guess more or less same generation. There's no players really that have retired since then. The likes of Dupont and Ntamack, Ramos, all those players are still in the team and still gonna go for 2027. So yeah, that's gonna be a huge game in the sense that I guess we want to show the box we're here, and we're definitely a team to consider for the next World Cup. And there's a bit of a revenge, I think. I see in the news that they're thinking about it's not definitive team sheet, but they're thinking about playing Ramos as an example. Yeah. The fact that Ramos was due not to play because he just had a baby, and they thought to rest him shows how seriously I think the team is taking the games. They also involved Dupont, that's injured, but he's training with the French team, which is very uncommon. But it means that every positive influence, every positiveness they can take, they're going to bring it to the team to try to win, I guess, on Saturday against the Springboks.
Yeah, but I think, I think the question I have is, and didn't answer 100% for me. I'm thinking, like, how did the people experience? What was their mindset like? And obviously, you work with a lot of players as well. You visit a lot of clubs as well, and you're often a fly on the wall. What was the language like? What was the talk like? Because I can tell you this from my experience for 2 years or even more. I've been taking a lot of flack when I was coaching at La Rochelle. I had certain colleagues giving me grief, saying the French team is the best team in the world. It's for sure they're going to win the World Cup. The Springboks time's over. And I just thought I'd put it out there. That World Cup was supposed to be in South Africa. Then some behind the scene things happened and that World Cup got stolen from us. I just thought I'd put that out there. We could just get that straight. So that potentially was actually supposed to be a home quarterfinal anyway. But I would like to know, how did the French people experience? Because I can give you my point of view, but for yourself, as an agent, but also as a French person, like walking in the streets and in the corridors of top clubs, top 14 clubs, what was the buzz at that? It's not the buzz, but what were the echoes you were hearing?
Well, first, to answer you properly, I assume that we would have preferred to play in South Africa and win the World Cup.
It's the second time around we've won it in France. So
So,
maybe the following World Cup should be
like,
again.
well, we're not gonna ask to host the next one of the next World Cup, I assume. Then, no, more seriously, I think the first thought was obviously it was very controversial. Lots of things in the Rucks. I remember that action from Iben Edzebes. Is it forward, not forward? This is, that Colby running on the conversion of Ramos. All of that's been very controversial, and it was a very close game. So I guess in France, the first thought was, okay, we've been kind of cheated, and we should have won that game. The second thought was, maybe we should do something a bit different and just try to work harder and stuff. I think there was a lot of pressure around the French team having that World Cup at home. And I assume you would have also, I'll ask you the question after, but one very good insight of how the French players went back to their club, how you experienced it at La Rochelle. But I think it was very hard, I assume, for the French team in general to how can I say, to handle what happened, in the sense that it was very negative. I think for French rugby, because everybody was when there's a World Cup at home, there's a lot of enthusiasm. Everybody thinks we're gonna win and stuff. Then boom, one game, and it's quarterfinal. It's not like losing a semi-final or even a final. It's quarterfinal, so meaning you're not even part of the best 4 teams in the world in the competition. So I think it was a hard one, and I think everybody, most probably the staff of the French national team, thought, okay, this is not the end of the story. This is just a step going towards potentially a win or better result at the next World Cup. So I think everybody is back on track. It took probably a year. I think the first year after that was like French team experience stuff, and even now there's still like there's a lot of new players coming in, and but I'm curious to know also your perspective as a coach.
Yeah.
You were at La Rochelle when the likes of Winnie Antonio, Greg Aldrit, and some other players came back to the club after the World Cup, and after obviously the fact they lost, and it's hard to lose after like 3-4 months of preparation, competition, lots of intensity, but you're also in a closed environment, and you have to go back to the fans and people that are disappointed as well.
Yeah. So I think firstly we just need to acknowledge the massive evolution that French rugby went through over those few years before the World Cup. I mean, because in the past we know French rugby or the French team, after 60 minutes, they were cooked. So let's give credit where it's due with the team of Fabien Galtier, where they transformed the French team, becoming way more disciplined, way more precise, still maintaining that French flair, and also bringing a bit more aggression to their game as well, and also the aggression on defense, which was brilliant. And I think that one of the reasons why there was a massive disappointment for 2 years, the build up to that World Cup, let's be honest, France was probably the number 1 team in the world. But then again, it links up to the discussion we had recently on the podcast with Conrad Smith. It's the World Cup what's important. Like, do you want to be playing your best rugby in between World Cups? And even at the ABs, there was a stage they were more focused on the results in terms of winning every game instead of being focused on when it counts. But coming back to your question, it was tough to see the players because obviously coaching in France and also having stakes in the French game, meaning I'm developing younger players. We are preparing players to perform. So as I mentioned before publicly, that was a tough one for me to watch because yes, I am South African, but also you got players playing for your club and you want them to do well. And to be honest with you, some of them, without mentioning names, they were mentally broken. They were cooked. It took a lot out of them. I think for some of them, they struggled to come to terms with that. And look, everyone has a way of dealing things, and I can't say that the French public is wrong or the French media is wrong, but because they went on for a very long time talking about that quarterfinal, not a few months, more than a year. Almost every week in the Media Olympic, you saw an article regarding that quarterfinal and what went wrong and what was cheating and what was the wrong decision. And I agree with you, at the end of the day, you've got to deal with it. But, if roles were reversed, South Africa probably would have done the same, in all fairness. But I did pick up that it took a lot of individuals a very long time to regain their form. And even if we look at the Six Nations in 2024, it wasn't the best performances of the French team, except for the game in Dublin where the guys really stepped up. But yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's going to be an interesting game that's lying ahead here for us.
But I assume as well that I'm curious to see how the game is going to be prepared from the French team, in the sense that for me, this is not the revenge. So, I mean, this is the game after.
But Louis Bilbarret said it's the revenge. He actually did that on YouTube, on a video, French rugby video, and he said, this is a revenge game. He said that.
Who said that?
Louis Bilbarret. He said that.
Maybe for him, but I think the real revenge is next World Cup. In Australia in 2027. Another quarterfinal or semi-final or even a final will be like the real revenge for me. It's just that there's also like, I guess that's where there's a big difference in between the Latin culture and the Anglo-Saxon culture. I think French people are much more emotional. So in the sense that the way that game is going to be prepared is going to be probably like having flashbacks of videos of that previous game. And then probably thinking about, but if we beat them now, it's 1-1. But it's not 1-1. You guys won the World Cup, and we just have to accept it. And our preparation is to win the next World Cup. And if we have to lose this one, if it's the way to win the next World Cup, it doesn't really matter. But I guess after this pride, you go on the pitch, obviously, to win the game. But what I'm thinking is it's very important that it's not we don't go into a wrong battle, in the sense that at the World Cup, both teams have had their whole season of preparation for the World Cup and everything. When now for everybody, so it has changed, because now the South African teams are playing the URC, so they're playing at the same time. It's not like previously when the South African teams were playing Super Rugby, but still it's an end of year tour, first game of the end of year tour. Top 14 would have played 8 games. URC probably even less. At what level are the players? I mean, are they at their best? Or are they still in the building of a season? I'm interested about that, and interested also about the intensity. But I wanted to ask you as well about, like, it was one of the questions I had for you. The South African teams are kind of struggling in the European Cups, and they're not doing so well, and they're not real contenders since they joined the competitions to win it. And the Springboks are dominating World Rugby, but club rugby is not that good. When for French rugby, it's almost the opposite. Well, we are winning all the, and you know what I'm talking about. You won 2 Champions Cup with La Rochelle, but the French national team is not the best in the world.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Before I answer that one, Damien, I think which is interesting, and I want you to answer after I answer your question, is that explaining a bit more why with the Latin culture there's so much emotion involved. I would like to get to, I'll come back to that one. But to answer your question is, to be honestly, I don't know. I'm not in South Africa at the moment, but what I have picked up from speaking to various, because I've actually asked that same question, because I get the impression that the Champions Cup is not that important for South African teams. And what I've been hearing is, it's not that it's not important, it's just they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the depth in their squads in terms of playing the Champions Cup and the UFC, and there's the Currie Cup as well. And I'm not sure in terms of the timeline which competition is being played regarding the Currie Cup, but I know the UFC and the Champions Cup is kind of like going hand in hand, similar to the top 14 in the Champions Cup. I think also it's tough if I have to put myself from a South African point of view and asking people, in South Africa, some people, like, even sometimes the stadium is not even that full. the like we say in French, the tribune, the stands. And like for some people, like the Champions Cup, they used to watch and follow because it was the European Cup. And I don't think South African teams have a real stake in it yet, maybe. If I can put it in terms of, in terms of the Super Rugby, that was something. Winning a Super Rugby back then, that was the holy grail. I was fortunate enough to be part of a team that won it for the first time, a South African team. So to be honest, I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's because it's not really part of our tradition, if we can put it that way. Maybe teams will warm up to it. I'm not sure. But I do know after speaking to some members in different clubs and franchises, just they don't have the depth. Because you're also sitting with a lot of players playing abroad, whether it's Japan, whether it's in France, whether it's in England. So the amount of players available, your high quality players, I think it's a bit limited. That's what I think in terms of when it comes to the squad. So that's just my point of view, because actually we had this discussion before on the podcast as well. But coming back to you, because I would like people to understand is because we say that Latin people are different. Like, why is that? Why is there so much emotion involved? Like, I know South Africans, for example, and once again, I can't imagine how Rush is going to be. Or I don't know exactly how he's preparing this game, what language, nobody does. But knowing how the Springboks potentially would prepare for this is not the greatest game ever. This is just another game. Because, like you mentioned there, this is not the World Cup. Nobody's going to win a title after this one. If South Africa win, then everybody's going to say, well, yeah, well, they're the World Cup champions. If France wins, people say, well, that's normal. They're playing at home. So, it's for South Africa, there's not a big stake. But what I know that for the French players, there's going to be a lot of emotion. Even though you say it might not be a revenge game, I can tell you now, I think for the players it's going to be different. But why is there that big emotional side in the French culture and the Latin culture? Where does that come from?
Well, firstly, I assume that it probably changed a bit in the sense that if you look at those documentaries, Chasing the Sun, and where you see Rassi talking and having those speeches with the players and stuff, that emotional side is also became a part of the South African way of management, if I may say this way, at least with the Springboks, when France probably has tried to be a bit more Anglo-Saxon and more like fact-based and stuff like this. But you won't change it. Like, this is the way, this is cultural, this is the way we are raised. We look a lot at, in general, in the culture, I'm not only talking rugby, in how people are handling a situation. Somebody was actually telling me again yesterday how we're big around mental health, probably bigger in France than in other countries all over the world. And that's true that the emotional side of things is very important for us. I assume probably 60-70% of the starting team that's going to play against the Springboks on Saturday has played that quarterfinal. So there's going to be a lot of emotions. They're going to think about what happened in the past, what was the impact on them. And basically, we are where we are probably unpredictable. And that's part probably of the French flair as well, I assume, is the history of what do we do of a loss? How do we handle it? And how do we overgo the past? And using that, using a sort of bad time to make it something positive or to make it a strength is probably something we know really well how to do in general. That's just, if you look at French sport, it's not only rugby. If you look at French sport, it's we are so we're just special for that, if I may say it this way. Losing and be able to win after, using that loss, but we don't use it with the fact saying, okay, let's talk about the French team. So we don't say, okay, the Rucks or the Moles or, I don't know, the Scrum or whatever. We use it like just the emotion of losing, just to work harder and be better and have that, we call it that soul supplement. I don't know if I can translate it this way, but yeah, we have that. And sometimes it can make us weaker, most probably. but most of the time it probably make us dig a bit more deeper in our resources, and then be able to win a big game.
Yeah, that's interesting because, and you're right there. When we saw that emotional side of us, that's South Africans. We don't really see that. We're not used to that, and it's maybe not something that we are public about in terms of our emotion. And you could potentially be right. And just maybe for our audience, having been involved in top 14 rugby as a coach, and Damien spot on there, the way the top 14 clubs, it's super professional, in terms of they actually are trying to adapt more Anglo-Saxon or Southern Hemisphere. I hate when you say Anglo-Saxon. It's the Southern Hemisphere way. Everybody say Anglo-Saxon. It's not England the trendsetters, man. Come on.
For
Come on.
not gonna make friends out.
Who won the last few World Cups? New Zealand and South Africa. It's not England. They did it in 2003. Now, respect the English rugby. It takes me back when I was at Colomiers. And I remember, I was part of a coaching staff. It was Julien Sarot and Fabien Barneau. And I remember the speech of Julien Sarot in the changing room at Oyena. Man, that was unbelievable. I was like, I want to go. I actually wanted to injure a player so that I can go on the field and lace up, because he inspired me so much. And we were on it. Like for 40 minutes, we were dominating. And then, like you guys always say in French, all right, then that emotion ran out. The emotion can't fuel. It can maybe ignite something, but if that's your sole source of fuel, and this is a great lesson for rugby players and teams and coaches, emotion can only get you so far, but it's not sustainable when it comes to performance. You won't be able to go 80 minutes. So I do believe that Fabian is mindful of that, and I think he's going to be focusing on controlled emotion. There will be the element, because that's normal, because that's what French rugby is all about. There's also that flair, that's the emotion, and just once again giving credit to the French public. You go to about 30 games, or you follow 30 games. Those stands are full every single week. They're not as big as other stands, like 40,000, but the people are always there behind. They are passionate, and South African supporters are really passionate, but the French, that vibe, that atmosphere, the games, the singing, the chanting is just unbelievable. But I want to ask you this. This game is going to be a big one. Who for you are going to be the key players in this game?
Well, I guess I'll talk for the French side. I'll let you talk for the box. I assume there's gonna be a few, obviously. If Ramos is playing, it's definitely a big change. I mean, Ramos been so good the past few seasons that he does change the team, not only because of his kicking game, but because of all of his abilities, and I guess what he brings to a team. Is actually a good example of a guy that you can see with a lot of emotion, but that can control it properly, and he'd probably be a leader in that team. I'm interested also to see Ntamack is going to probably play and start, but he didn't play that quarterfinal. He didn't play that World Cup because he got injured just before. So that's going to be a big change also. The fact there's not Dupont, even though he's training with the team and stuff, he's obviously not playing and not back. So I assume that's going to be interesting to see Nolan Nogarek. If it's him starting, is it him or is it going to be Luku? But Luku's just back from an injury.
Okay.
But the scrum half position is going to be key when there's no Dupont. Most likely there might be some newcomers or guys that are uncapped or that only have a few caps. So it could be the likes of the Lucid, Erdosio, the tighthead Montagne, the hooker, Cramon if he plays. All those guys are going to react because it's also a bit of a gamble in those games. Maybe they're going to be great, and I hope so. And maybe if it's one of their first cap, and you play against the Box, big crowd, lots of pressure. How are they gonna handle that? So that's also a bit of a key. But maybe that freshness in the team might be a very good point. I assume that's how they're gonna choose it. And the last one, I'd say, I don't want to name a full team or a full squad, but I think the fact that Fickou, that's most likely, I think, to captain that team. Fickou's great player. He's one of the best player at his position in the world, and his leadership and all he's gonna bring also into the game is gonna be key. And uh, because everybody thinks about, and that's actually a transition to my question for you. When you play the box, you're thinking about that raw strength and the rucks and the molds and the scrums and everything, but the thing is, I'm not sure that's going to be the key of the game. Maybe, but that's a question for you. Maybe the key of the game is going to be the speed, actually, because both teams have a lot of speed in their backlines, and that all depends if both teams decide to go to a war with the forwards, or if they decide to play rugby and run more the ball. So that's going to be very interesting. So, what do you think is going to be the key of the game, or what are going to be the keys of that game, you think, and who are going to be the players also that are going to be important for the Bucks?
So I know a lot of people that are listening, they're expecting me to say the scrum, but no, it's not that. um, yes, definitely it's going to be the physicality. But if you look at the pack of the French team, got Meow, you got Flamont, you got Chalon. She's a monster. I don't know. It's like something has happened to him in the last season since coming back from his injuries. He's been destroying. He's a strong ball carrier. And also Paul Bourdieu, you got all these unbelievable players. And what's the eighthman from that plays flank lock for Lyon?
Yeah.
Yeah, love that player, man. He's hard and, he goes hard. So, yes, there's going to be physicality. I do believe the French pack do have the players to match that physicality, compared to previous years. But I do believe where the keys, you spoke about speed. We have seen now the Boks are trying to play a more expansive game, especially guys with like Ergius Neyman. He's the ability to offload and keep the ball alive. We do see the Boks are now focusing on keeping the ball alive. But, Russ, you never know what type of game plan. But we know the strength of the Springbok is the aerial battle. And if we look back to the quarterfinal, that's where it cost the French team, in my opinion. With back then, Bill Barre was still a young player coming in. He was, Afrikaans, he was gepeper. He was peppered with the high balls. I don't even know that translates to English. But you put a lot of pressure. So the aerial battle is going to be key because that's an integral part of the game of the Springboks, trying to get that ball back, getting that scraps back, as we call it in rugby lingo. Just bounce. We saw also Kurtley Orange putting massive pressure. And also we saw the try of Sasha Feinberg Mongomzulu, the way he did up and under in the 22, he backed himself, chased it, got it back, and he scored. So it's going to be interesting. I think for me, that also depends because everybody's expecting Rassi to select Sasha at number 10. But who knows? He might select Mani, might select Andre. That's the thing. We don't know who Rassi is going to select because each game he played a different starting 15. Obviously, you got key players like Kwagga Smith that's always present, always there. Jasper Wiese, Malcolm Marx, but we never know. But I do think it is going to be interesting to see have two attacking flyers facing off, in terms of that. So looking at the way the French play, and I do believe the French strength is their backline players, that back three, Peno, Bilbare and Ramos. Thomas Ramos is probably one of the greatest players. A lot of people talk about Dupont, but for me, he's right up there. Right up there. For someone that has been so consistent for so long, over seasons, as you've just mentioned it. And that's actually one player. Post-World Cup, he didn't step off. He just kept on going. He just kept on performing. So, but for me, I think the key is going to be the rucks. We have seen in the rugby championships where the Boks at times were under pressure in the rucks, lost a few key balls, got penalized a few times. So that's going to be the key because we're going to want quick ball both sides. So the key for me is going to be the rucks. About putting pressure there, and obviously you're going to be massive contest between, I think it's Marchand that might be starting. You got Marchand, and you also got Malcolm Marx. You're going to have these players going at each other at the ruck time. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But then it also comes down to the set piece. I do believe, and I can be wrong, this is the thing about scrummaging as well and the set piece. You can be good the week before, and when when you think you're not going to be that good, you can get a hiding. So I do believe the scrum, if we look at it player to player, I do believe in the front row the French are lacking.
But what do you think also about discipline? I mean,
but let me finish before you want to go into discipline, because the front row with Montagna or Docio, which are decent players, good players, but you're sitting with the Springbok sign. You got Volkelo, you got this new youngster, you got Thomas the Toy. You're sitting with Bowen Fenter. You're sitting with all these players, and these guys are strong and they've been dominating. And it's going to be interesting to see. And this is because we know in club rugby there's a lot of cheating going on. There's a lot of cheating, a lot of tricking going on, and some of these players get away with murder in French rugby in top 14. And this is international level. So it'll be interesting. Will they be able to match the power of the box, or will they be resorting to the dark arts? Discipline. Okay, now I spoke about scrums. Now I'm happy. Discipline. Yeah, definitely it's going to be a big factor, but you need to define. I think a lot of people talk about discipline. Discipline is not just about not giving away penalties. Discipline is about sticking to the game plan, sticking to the strategy in terms of focusing on your job, executing your role. And we do have a lot of players in the Springbok team that are those borderline guys when they're going for the poaching, a guy like Kwagga Smith, he's on the limit sometimes. You get penalized, giving a few penalties away. So that will be key because you're sitting with Ramos, he can put it over from 60 meters. So that's going to be a massive increase. So yes, discipline, which is normal, will be an integral part of the game. But I think we are in for an exciting game. I'm excited. Like, yes, I would love South Africa to win, but I'm more excited about the game because if we look at what we've experienced recently in the Rugby Championship, Australia beating the Boks in South Africa, and you see South Africa getting a hiding against the All Blacks, and then boom, the next week it changed. So it's going to be an interesting one because I do think the keys. Everybody's talking about South Africa's battle ready, and the French team haven't really played together. But I think that might just be the thing that lights their fire.
But I meant more like, not discipline in that way, but I meant more like aggressivity because there's been a lot of stories. Obviously at the World Cup, but even the game before I remember I was at the game at Stade Vélodrome in Marseille, and there were red cards for both sides, but there were stuff of Peter Steph Dutoit. But tell him to be that Jonathan Danty is not playing these games. Nobody to focus on anymore. But I mean, there's gonna be also a lot of, as you said, going over the limits or no, and that physicality. And I assume also the year after years, that type of aggressivity is not allowed anymore. And I mean, you've been used to play a game where almost like you played a game where there were no rules almost, or it would be what it will feel like for a player nowadays. So that's probably one of the big strengths of the Springboks, that aggressivity. But it has to be controlled, and that's why I say the speed is going to be key as well, because I think you've got to avoid certain situations. If you go in a ruck battle, as an example, and you go like sort of like forwards rugby for a little while in that game, sure there are going to be cards and stuff, and that's going to change the game as well. So I assume both teams don't want that at all.
I mean, okay. On a more serious note, okay, I'm fortunate. I'm going to be in Paris to go watch that game, and it's quite actually funny. I need to go into a French box, so that's an interesting story. But what I want to know, and I think maybe all the viewers and the listeners would love to know. Now, South Africa, when there's a rugby game, it's very important. You need to get the snacks right. So for South Africans, it's about the 3 Bs. It's beer, biltong, and brandy. Okay, so the 3 Bs are very important: beer, biltong, and brandy. That's synonymous with us. Like something like, even like these days, I don't really drink alcohol, but when there's a Springbok game, I need to have brandy. So there's definitely a bottle of brandy going with me to Paris, so I can get in the right frame of mind. So what will be on your plate when you're watching the French game? Will it be fine cuisine? Would it be a bottle of wine from the cave, a bit of foie gras? What will you be having while watching this game?
I assume that's gonna be interesting. It depends. Like this one, I'm gonna be watching from my coach, most probably with my daughter. That is 6 only, but she'll probably watch with me. We'll probably sing the national anthem. She loves that, and probably a few snacks, stuff like saucisson and stuff like this.
Yes.
Some probably some foie gras, and Like I'm also not big on alcohol, so there could be a glass of wine maybe, but
You're not
much
French,
more
man.
from
What's
my
wrong
side.
with you?
No, it's not that I'm
We're
not.
getting older, man. We're getting older.
Yeah, it's just gonna be a chill one. Maybe some, maybe a friend or two that you actually know that are good with snacks are gonna join. But no, I want to focus to make sure I don't want to have a drink because I want to watch properly to make sure the ref is doing right this time.
Can we expect some posts on X or anything like that? No, but I think you know what, we spoke about a lot of things, and just for us maybe to summarize everything up, and for all our viewers and everybody listening in the audience, this was not the classic style, but I felt it was important to talk about this big game that's happening, but I think maybe to pull out the key insights. You know, it's a big game. Disappointment was experienced by the French players and the French public. Revenge is not the right way to go about this, because that means you won't be lucid, you won't be calculated. It's about formulating the right strategy, but just for having a nice, like we said in French, dosage of emotions, you know, right? The right dose of emotion, because that's important, because that's what French rugby is all about. And that, I think the big thing is coming into this game is there's so many different battles. And it's about also identifying which battle will allow you to actually win this game, even though it's accumulation of different things. But it doesn't mean if you're the best team in the world, that's a given, you're going to win. And it doesn't mean because all the facts are against you or the data that's against you that you can't win. Anything is possible. We have seen this. But I think most importantly, the key to any great team is humility, preparing with humility. If the Springboks are humble and preparing with humility, which I know Rusty will do because he keeps guys on their toes when they think they're going to start, they're not in the team. But most importantly, I'm really looking forward to this game because I feel that rugby in general, the competition, the competitiveness of the game has picked up. We've seen that in a rugby championship. We've seen it now as well this week, and everybody expected Australia to win because they had a fairly decent rugby championship. England won. But most importantly, the thing is, don't use emotion. Don't let emotion be the key factor to fuel your game. It can be part of you, it can be part and partial, but it's very important. And like Damien just mentioned, that controlled aggression, that will be key. But anyway, we've gone way over time. It was really great to enjoy the space with you. Definitely get you back at some stage talking about a lot of topics. I do feel you have a lot to share also with our audience, especially to the younger players, in terms of defining when is the right time to get an agent and what your agent should be doing. I do believe a lot of players have a misconception about that. But I was going to say thanks for taking the time. I know you have a busy schedule. And it feels good to see you without your phone glued to your ear. So that's good. So I wish you a great afternoon. Hey?
You keep an eye on it.
All right. No, thanks, Damien. Thanks for joining. And I hope you have an awesome week and bon match.
Thanks, G, for the invitation. I hope you'll enjoy the game at the stadium as well, and Allez les Bleus. And I hope I'll call you to celebrate on my side as well of the game. On fait le prochain en français.
Thanks, guys. Really enjoyed this, and we'll catch you soon. And most importantly, if you're enjoying this podcast, please like, follow, and subscribe, and share it with your fellow friends. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.